Starting in January, 4 new members will join a Boston City Council that's expected to be more progressive. One example is a community activist chosen as the first new councilor in 12 years, serving Allston-Brighton and succeeding Mark Siomo. We'd like to welcome the Councilor-Elect from District 9, Liz Breadon. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to go into your background because it's a little strange. You're a community activist becoming a councilor. That's not too strange, but you worked in healthcare before running. So how did that feed into what you are going to become in January?
Well, I'm a physical therapist by profession. I worked back in Northern Ireland. I worked in the National Health Service, and then I worked at Perkins School for the Blind here. I think being a healthcare professional, you get to understand the interconnectedness of different factors in health and well-being. So if folks are living under stress because their housing's insecure, or they have a lot of stress with commuting, all the different life circumstances that contribute to stress also contribute to ill health. So I think I come from that perspective of seeing the interconnectedness between different factors that contribute to health. So as I go into the City Council, I would hope to work with others to try and identify issues that we can help alleviate and
I can see
make life better.
That overlap could come into play with something like what's going on with the Jackson Man School, because you have a lot of students there with disabilities. They're going to be facing some disruption.
Well, I think the situation of the Jackson Man School is of great concern to many people in our community and across the city. It's a large complex that houses the Horace Mann School for the deaf. It also houses the Jackson Elementary School, and then the Jackson Man Community Centre. So it's a large complex. It's well used and has quite a high student population. There's a lot of students in there with special needs, and parents are concerned that they will lose continuity, and that that community of support that's there to support those young people will be splintered. So we're really advocating to try and keep it together, the Jackson Elementary School, so that those students can continue on their path to achieve their full potential.
Well, I'm sure one of the other reasons you got elected is that you've been involved in city politics for a while, going back to 2004, if I'm not mistaken. At least this is what Matt O'Malley said, the first time you volunteered. What made you do that?
Well, I happened to go to a meet and greet. The campaign was Andrea Cabral's campaign to be Suffolk County Sheriff. And I went to a meet and greet, and I was very impressed with the candidate, and friends of mine who were involved with volunteering. And I said, well, this is a great way to get to know new people and to be politically engaged. So I threw myself into that campaign and worked in Allston-Brighton specifically to get out the vote and spread the news about Andrea. And she won both Ward 21 and Ward 22 in that race, so it was very good.
Now, you have the background from Northern Ireland, different political culture, higher turnouts, maybe?
Oh, yes. Well, it's a sort of because of the sectarian context in Northern Ireland, it's very tribal. So elections are very competitive, especially in the area I came from, which is Fermanagh, South Tyrone. So in the last election that they had recently, I think the turnout was 72%, and they really feel dismayed if the turnout goes down to 60. So that doesn't bear any relationship to what we have here in Boston.
Well, in this district this year, the turnout was a paltry 16 and change percent, but it was also a lot higher than 12 years ago when Mark Siomo won his first term. So it looks as if things are moving in the right direction. What do you see changing in this area?
I think there are many young people who are here. They're young professionals. They're working in the city. They're not just students. They're here. They've got careers. They're living in the city, working in the city. And I think the issues that I ran on of affordable housing, improvements in our transit, and also issues around sustainability and really resilience in relation to climate change were the issues that seem to resonate with them. So I feel that are concerned about the direction things are going, and they did weigh in and vote in this election. We did make a concerted effort to reach out to those voters. The traditional wisdom when you're setting up a campaign is that you go and identify the most likely voters, the people who have voted habitually in the last municipal elections. But we did that in the first round, in the preliminary round, and then the second round we really needed to dig deeper and really reach out to more people. And we broadened our net to try and engage with more young people in Ward 21 specifically.
Now, this is a district, it might not have the greatest vulnerability to evictions, but I'm sure there are a lot of people struggling to stay there, whether as renters or maybe even as property owners in some cases. What would you like to do for them?
The issue of housing is of great concern all across the city. In Allston-Brighton, we have a lot of pressure on our housing stock from the universities. We have a lot of students. The universities aren't housing enough of their students on campus. That's one issue that's contributing to the pressure on our housing stock. There's a lot of new housing being built. Like there's over 5,000 units in the pipeline or already constructed in Allston-Brighton, but very, very little of it is actually affordable for the folks who live and work, the working folks in Allston-Brighton. So I'm really going to try and push developers to, and the mayor, it starts with the mayor, is to increase the inclusionary development policy to 20%. Right now it's about 13%. So there's a huge amount of development happening and even more in the pipeline. So we really want to make sure that Allston-Brighton gets its fair share of housing that's really affordable for the workforce, the people who live here.
I know looking at some of the pre-election messaging, there's a group that opposes rent control. 3 out of 4 of their choices got elected, and there's a group that's more leaning towards something like rent control, and 9 out of 10 of their candidates got elected. What do you see the council doing when people all act on this as a group?
I think we really have to look at stabilizing our rents in the city. What we're doing right now is unsustainable, and we need to address stabilizing our rents in whatever way we can. And I don't always talk about rent stabilization rather than rent control, because I feel that when you say rent control, you go back to what happened before, which wasn't always equitable and didn't target the relief to the people who really needed it. The bottom line is that we really need to build more affordable housing in the city, but we need to use every tool in the toolkit to try and stabilize rents and make it possible for people to stay. We're losing so many people from the city, although our population's growing. We are losing many families who want to stay there. I just read a piece in the paper the other day about people are moving out to live in Salem. They have one car. They like to be able to walk to a commuter rail and get on the train and come into the city. We need to ensure that that we, in Allston-Brighton specifically, where we're losing a lot of young families, to try and stabilise that population so that they stay. But also young professionals, our artist community are under great pressure as well. So I think we need to really seriously address building more housing that's affordable.
What about the way that the flavor of the neighborhood is changing? When I go through the area where Harvard is expanding, it's really quite dramatic. Do you want to ratchet up Harvard's contribution to the neighborhood in any way?
Well, Harvard has a huge real estate project underway in terms of their plans to develop beacon yards, etc. I really feel that we need to work in tandem with Harvard as a community. This goes beyond their institutional planning process. This is a much bigger canvas that they're working on. And so there are developers coming in with plans to help develop that area. I feel that we need to advocate strongly for mixed income housing as part of that project, that larger project. And I feel that Harvard is a very well endowed, wealthy institution that has a long-term interest. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be there forever. But we need to work in partnership with them to to build a community that's sustainable and diverse, economically diverse, so that people can actually stay. It's in Harvard's interest that we have an economically diverse community as well, because their workforce draws from all levels of the community. So we have to really make sure that they will participate in that, making that happen.
And have a few artists in the mix as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
City Councilor-Elect from District 9, Liz Breedon. We'll have more news in just a moment.